and welcome to Ep.3 of Hybrid Fitness Report. I'm Paul Reynolds.
I'm Jude Reynolds.
This week we're following up last week's conversation about what is hybrid fitness and how CrossFit is a part of that. We've had some strong opinions in the comments. The main feature this week is an introduction to Hyrox, so Jude will be taking us through that. The fastest growing sport in the whole area of hybrid fitness. We'll also have a week in workouts, a recipe for a snack that you'll want to take to work with you, and the workout of the week. So going straight in then, Jude, to last week's conversation, we had a very helpful introduction from you on what is hybrid fitness, where you laid out the 10 components of what fitness is and made the point that it wasn't the Jude list, it was the recognized scientific list of what fitness is. And hybrid fitness then is combining a majority of those to a high degree, or as many as possible of those to a high degree.
Yeah.
So we had a conversation around that, and we also spoke a little bit about what about CrossFit? Was that hybrid fitness? To which the answer was
yes.
A vehement yes. And when we posted about that, people had opinions. And not everyone saw it entirely as you saw it. So, for example, and I know you've talked about this once before, one guy said it was rugby. 80 minutes of both strength and endurance. They outpower you, and I did ask who he meant by you, and he did mean you. They outpower you on every single machine you point at and can do double the reps. Sure.
Not sure what that means, but yeah.
Sure, 80 minutes isn't 80 minutes of play. However, they need to reposition and prepare more than the play itself. Plus, one could also argue the same for Hyrox. There is time for short periods of rest. So, to address the first thing, Jude, every rugby player of a decent standard can outpower you on every single machine you can point at.
Yeah, I don't really know. I see where the comment's coming from, and I think I made a rule about this one. It was, yes, actually, rugby in terms of team sport does make sense. But then you made the point about, like he referred to, it's not 80 minutes. You play for maybe 60 of it, of which 10 is preparing to go into a scrum or the breakdown of ruck or a penalty repositioning or something like that. So it's not as nearly as endurance based as people would think it is if you really break down how many minutes of live play there are in an 80-minute period in rugby. And regarding the double the reps, I don't know about that one. I also don't know how you convert reps into distance on a piece of cardio kit, but I guarantee there's not a single rugby player out there that will beat my 2K time on a rower. And
not a single
maybe
one.
Even a skier. I do not reckon if you lined up.
There are no guys in the second row of a scrum, like 6'6" guys who can outrow you over 2K because the endurance isn't there.
No. I'd say most top-end rugby players could beat me anything 1 to maybe 1.5K and under, but I don't think a single one of them would beat my 6:09 2K time on a rower.
So essentially, he might have a point about the power because there are rugby players who are a lot bigger than you. But once the endurance kicks in, it's not the same. And World Rugby says that of an 80-minute game at the moment in recent years, 49% of that is ball in play. But that was an interesting one where the immediate reaction to thinking about the high level of fitness in a Hyrox athlete or a CrossFit athlete was, yeah, but rugby's far better. Which, as you said, there is a point to that, and there's some legitimacy to saying that rugby guys have a kind of insane power to endurance ratios. Some of them, particularly perhaps centers and who these days in particular are pretty big guys, just not quite as tall as you, and are carting themselves around the field quite a lot.
So again, it's just which components of fitness do you value more when you come to comparing hybrid sports together is really the question for that one.
Kind of interesting to do as a series is to take various different sports and break them down and give them a hybrid fitness score. What rating do these sports get as hybrid fitness events? Even or perhaps especially the one that don't pretend to be hybrid fitness. And the first sport we're going to look at is cricket, and it's going to get 100% rating on coordination, and then it's going to slide ever so slightly from there. But it's important to me that cricket makes the top for 1 week. So we'll definitely do that. I think the other thing I wanted to add with this whole conversation about how hybrid fitness are the various sports is that our conversation really is about sports that are designed specifically to measure fitness, whereas rugby doesn't measure fitness. You need high levels of various components of fitness to be good at rugby these days more than ever, but it's not a competition whereby the fittest rugby player wins. So the whole point is this is a look at how fit you are, and I think that's the big divide. So in one sense, we can rule out any sport from this conversation whose goal is not to measure fitness, right?
Yeah, that's why we didn't initially bring up any of these team sports, because none of them are trying to measure how fit you are. They're trying to measure how good you are at the game, how technically proficient you are, and everything like that. That's why we didn't bring it into the question initially.
Yeah.
That's all. Yeah.
But we're going to do that now because we're having a league table, and all the sports are going to be. A week in workouts is our next piece. Jude, what have you been up to?
A lot of WODs that I haven't done in a while. So my training has changed slightly. I've been doing a lot of aerobic pieces. After those aerobic pieces, I've been doing some strength work in the form of EMOMs. So I've done a Bulgarian.
What's an EMOM?
Every minute on the minute. So sounds a lot more fun than it actually is, I guess, when you say that word. But it's the other day, for example, it was 3 reps on each leg with the Bulgarian split squat, which is essentially having one leg elevated, squatting down with one leg until your knee touches the floor, your back knee touches the floor, and then squatting up again. 3 reps each side with a weight every minute for 10 sets. So you accumulate 30 reps on each side. I've done the same for bench press this week, so 3 reps every minute on the minute for 10 sets, and I've also done the same. I just did it this morning with strict press, barbell strict press. I've done a lot of aerobic pieces as always, so some zone 2 stuff. I've got a workout of the week coming up that I did today. That's part of it, which is some strength running, so I'll get into that. We're doing some shorter ones to practice going from heavy movements into aerobic pieces. So, for example, done 500 meters ski, followed by 7 thrusters at 65 kg, which is when you have a barbell in the front rack position. You go down into a squat back up, and then push directly overhead. So going from 500 meters on the ski to 7 thrusters at 65 kg for 5 sets, practicing on that will be sort of the sled work, where you have to go from running and using your aerobic capacity at a high level to moving heavy weight to running to moving heavy weight to running. And sort of a ski erg is just a low impact way of doing that as opposed to running. My mileage has gone up. Like I said last week, I was looking to hit 60k, so somewhere between that 60 to 70 kilometer mark in terms of running. And I did
my left knee ache just thinking about it.
Oh, okay. What about you? What did your week look like?
I've been getting back into some more serious strength workouts this week. So a lot of work, a lot of aerobic stuff as with previous weeks, but also one of the things I did this week for the first time in a long time was back squats. Now, I love lifting heavier weights, but I haven't done it for quite a while. And ever since I exploded my chest doing a bench press over a year ago.
Almost literally.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So it's not just bench press that makes me nervous. It's just big weights make me nervous now. And being super cautious about heavy weights has been a big part of me not being kind of in a bit of a mess physically. So I want to make sure I ramp up into it really, really slowly. It just felt good to be lifting a barbell off a rack, to be honest. So that was pretty good.
But that's key, is when you're coming from a period of doing not much to wanting to compete in an event like a Hyrox and post a relatively good time, you cannot afford to try and accelerate your training in a way that your body isn't adapted to or isn't used to. So if you say you've got a race in 8 weeks and you're coming from doing nothing and you want to get really good really quickly, you will get injured before you get really good if you don't take your training sensibly and increase your volume, increase the load at gradually. Because you have to think about your season in terms of A, B, C races. Your A race is what you want to be primed for.
Right.
Okay, and so the build is going to be through the C and the B race into the A race. You don't want to be trying to be the best that you can for the C. You want to use that C as experience for the A race, which for you, we don't know what the A race is yet, but we just know that the race that you have on the calendar is something to just mark as to where your fitness is. It's not the be all and end all.
Right. I'm not sure I'll ever have a be all and end all because I'm kind of waiting for the next ligament or tendon to kind of ping off where it's supposed to be. But yeah,
that's a great attitude.
It would be nice. It would be nice if the December race was my C race and it led into B and A. That would certainly be good.
But quickly, sub 90 coming in Stockholm or no?
Yeah, it's a great question. Great question.
You've got to answer it. Yes or no?
Yes.
Right now.
Sub 90 in Stockholm. Good. By which I mean 1:29:59, leaning across the line. Yeah. Okay.
We'll take it.
So
the stats won't show that. That's fine.
So next section is nutrition. Last week you took us through your classic overnight oats recipe, and you kind of killed the entire fitness nutrition industry in one 5-minute segment by saying, keep it simple, it's not complicated. You needed to say, and if you want to unlock peak fitness for your A race, do this overnight oats recipe, and then perhaps it'd been more popular, but So
no.
My one for this week, which I have done a video of, which I'll post separately to this, are protein energy balls. The macros on this are 7 grams of fat, 6 grams of protein, 8 grams of carbs, and 115 to 120 calories. So most protein bars are precisely double that in calories. And usually with a tiny bit more protein, but a lot less energy. So this is kind of a bit of both. It's not really good for a daytime snack. So for the overall recipe, you want enough ingredients that will make about 25 of these golf ball sized things. And you're looking at 3 cups of oatmeal, 3 scoops of protein powder, 2 tablespoons of ground flax, 2 tablespoons of chia seeds, a tablespoon of cinnamon. I mean, have as much cinnamon as you like. I want a bit of a cinnamon kick in there, so a full tablespoon of cinnamon. Mix those thoroughly, and then you want to add 1/3 of a cup of mini chocolate morsels or chocolate chips, and then a tablespoon of vanilla extract and a cup of organic almond butter. Again, use whatever kind of nut butter you like, but that's the one I choose. And then I'm looking at about 90 mils of either maple syrup or raw honey or light agave syrup, which will help hold it together as well as provide the sweetness. And then about 1/2 cup of unsweetened almond milk, and start on the low side. And then you just mix everything up. Mix it up very thoroughly by hand until it's slightly too sticky. When it's leaving a little bit too much in your fingers, that's about the right consistency. And then you're shaping them, and it takes a little while to shape it, and then roll it around in your hand until it holds together well.
Straight off the dome, right? No notes at all for that one.
No notes at all that I wrote down and have written in front of me. But that's not because I don't do it.
That's not what you were looking at. We have a cat. He's right there. 0 notes.
So yeah, I really like those, and they work for me. You're saving a ton of money on protein bars, and it's not processed, so you get good ingredients. None of this is processed. It's all good stuff. To me it's a good breakfast replacement, because I get all the macros I need, and I'm usually able to hold off till lunchtime when I do that.
And they're the ones that I tried, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so they're good. We're not trying to pretend like they are Krispy Kreme donuts or something, because some people with their recipes where they say 100 calories and it tastes, and they start doing all of this stuff, it's not like that. It tastes good. I don't. Nothing with these fresh ingredients going to taste like a full sugar donut, but they do taste nice. Right.
I did not do in the video what you're referring to, which is to take a bite and act surprised and like it's a Krispy Kreme. So it's the whole, that's just so good. It's not.
Feels sick. See, that actually is our cat. See? It was there. Hello.
She always butts in.
Does it still have diabetes, or is she better?
She just answered. She's still skinny with diabetes, and she's now sitting on my notes. Hey, sweetie, you can't stand there. There we go. You can stay here, but you can't stand there. Next up, before we get into our main feature of looking at what is Hyrox, I'd like to do the workout of the week. First of all, looking at last week. Run us through again, Jude, what we were doing last week.
Last week was the 8K of erg work, so it was 4K. It was 4 times 1K on the ski erg at threshold pace, and then 4 times 1K on the row at threshold pace, each with, I think it was 50 or 55 seconds of rest in between.
Seconds.
You did it then?
Yeah, of course I did.
How was it?
The rowing was great and the skiing sucked. So you told me I should be looking at doing something around a 215 to 220 on the ski. The heavy implication being if I wasn't so crap, I should do it a bit quicker than that. But my skiing is rough. So you're looking at 215 to 220. Get
technique crap, by the way, not aerobically crap.
So what did you think I did for my skis? Bearing in mind what Jude said, this wasn't going all out, but it was pushing, but it wasn't going all out.
It's meant to be uncomfortable.
Yeah, it was definitely uncomfortable, if that helps. I felt very uncomfortable through most of it. And I did, what was my average split on ski?
2 by the sounds of it?
2.8. Had to stay under the 220.
Oh, so I got it.
Well, you said 215 to 220, so I was kind of looking at it. I was chuntling along at about 220. I thought, I've got to stay under that.
Did that obstruct your intensity?
No, it felt more than intense enough. Thanks very much. Yeah, and then for rowing, you said for me 205, 210. Guess what I did?
204.8.
That's your guess?
Sure.
That's precisely what it was.
Oh, I'm good.
Wow. Okay. What a coach. Yeah, 204.8. I found my heart rate was a bit higher on the rower, but it was less effort. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. On the ergs, especially on the ski, because that's more misused than the row. If your technique isn't up to a certain standard, you can only recruit a certain amount of muscle groups to do the work. So for example, if you put so much of your effort into your arms and don't use the rest of your body like you should be doing, your heart rate's not going to get up so high, because although specific muscle areas are fatigued, your heart rate isn't going to have to work as hard to only supply, say, let's just make this simple, 10 muscles instead of 15 muscles. If you're using ski erg with the optimal form, you'd hinge at the hips, you'd bring your chest down, your hands would come down. As your chest came down, you would whip at the end. You'd be incorporating almost everything from the knee up if you were doing it proficiently, and so your heart would have to supply blood to all of those muscles. Whereas if you're using, like I said, only your arms, then it doesn't need to work as hard. Although it may feel harder, because in isolation, like if you're doing a concentration curl where you isolate the bicep and just curl using one very small muscle group, that's going to feel tough. But aerobically, your heart rate won't have to work nearly as hard as on the row, where you're using your legs, your upper body, your arms, everything.
Yeah, because my rowing form is pretty decent.
Yeah.
The other reason I feel more comfortable in that is that the ski erg feels like it's threatening my back a bit. And the following day in the gym, I was doing wall balls and I was looking at this guy on the ski erg, and I really wanted to say something, but you'd be proud of me because I didn't. I left him alone to do his thing. But
I had that exact same problem at the gym the other day. It's because at my gym there are the bikes that look onto the ski erg, and I think I have seen one person in about 6 months that has used them correctly, and it is painful to watch.
It's painful to watch,
including PTs, by the way.
Oh dear! This guy on the ski erg, there was basically no hinging at all, and he had his arms out like that. It just looked like he was storing up all kinds of pain for himself later on.
We'll talk about efficiency on the ergs and on the stations in depth at some point, because I think that's quite well, it really needs to be talked about, to be honest.
It really does. I mean, partly for pace, but I think more so just for long-term health and lack of pain. I mean, especially when people are doing these kinds of things, as most of us are, more recreationally than aspirationally. We want to be able to do this thing repeatedly.
Yeah, and also just being proficient in ergs just enables you to get more benefit out of them aerobically. You, for example, didn't get into your threshold zone on the ski erg, meaning the intention of the session was unintentionally missed.
Right.
Your heart rate didn't have to work in the zones that the workout was programmed to do. And so, for example, before you do thresholds on the ski erg, that's a great piece of data to know, because you're not efficient enough in the ski erg to do threshold workouts on the ski erg. You have to get to the point where you can maintain or sustain a heart rate in that zone whilst working at an appropriate RPE level.
Rate of perceived effort, right?
Which obviously you didn't get, but you did on the row, I'm assuming.
Oh yeah, row. Yeah, like I said, I'm recruiting all the muscles on the rower because I know what I'm doing, and I tense everything the way it's supposed to be, and everything's good.
In quick summary, the less muscles you use, the less blood has to be supplied to them, the less hard the heart has to work, and so your heart rate will be lower.
On to our main segment. We're going to be looking each week at one of the hybrid fitness sports in a bit more detail, and we're going to start with Hyrox. Jude, tell us about that.
It's a hybrid fitness event, controversial topic apparently, but it is a fitness race. It's comprised of 8 1-kilometer runs and 8 stations. In each venue, you will typically have, per 1-kilometer run, anywhere from 1 to 4 laps of a track that goes around the outside of your 8 stations. Once you complete your laps, you will then go into the stations. So if I'm starting on the start line, the gun will go, I will run, I'll do my anywhere from 1 to 4 laps to make my my first 1-kilometer run up. I will then go into station 1. I will finish station 1, I will then go out of station 1 and go out back onto the run track to run my 1 to 4 laps again. I will then come in and do station 2, and that will go on and on for your 8 stations. The 8 stations are in this order: ski erg, sled push, sled pull, burpee broad jumps, row erg, farmer's carry, sandbag lunges, and wall balls. At the end of the race is you finished your wall ball, and you then cross the finish line and you cross a timing mat, and then your time comes displayed next to your name on a big screen. Okay, so take us through the different stations then, because what kind of weights and what distance is involved? So you said the first station is the ski erg. How far are we going with that? So all the ergs, ski, row, and bodyweight movements are all going to be the same distance for every category. You've got female open, female pro, male open, male pro, and the open and pro just refer to the weights of the stations that are loaded, essentially. So the ski erg for everyone is going to be 1,000 meters. You then go onto the sled push, which I'm not going to name the exact weights, but there are differing weights between the female open, female pro, men open, men pro. They get heavier in the pro division, obviously. Then to the pull as well, same concept. The open categories for each gender are going to be lighter than the pro categories. So you've got 80 meters of burpee broad jumps. You then go onto the row, which is again 1,000 meters like the ski erg. Onto the farmer's carry, which is 200 meters. Onto the lunges, which are 100 meters. And then you've got 100 reps of the wall balls. And the sleds are 50 meters, by the way.
And how does it work with the farmer's carry? So what are you carrying?
Kettlebells, so a weight with a very annoyingly smooth handle that you often have to use chalk for.
Okay, so you've got the 8 sets of 1K, which are typically between 1 and 4 laps of. It's not even really a track, is it? It's just the inside. It's sort of like the inside of a building, a warehouse, or wherever it is you're competing in, like London Olympia.
Yeah.
You're doing 4 laps of the building inside it, and they build up all these station areas inside, and For the ski erg and the row erg, you're looking at that 1,000 meters, and for all the weight things, they vary depending on what category you're in. So those are the various different aspects of what Hyrox is. Could you give us kind of a tip for each of those stations and the running? Just take us through the race and say, what would you say is the most important thing to focus on in each segment?
Well, I'd say starting from the beginning, everyone sprints for the first 50 meters, and the tempting thing is to keep up with the front of the pack, or to keep up with someone, or to look for external cues as to how quickly you should go. Don't. Okay, hopefully you've trained and you know round about what your ability is, and your RPE is going to be clouded by adrenaline, meaning you won't really know how hard you're going for the first part of the race, because like I said, there's so much built up adrenaline in you that you think you're going at, say, 450 pace per kilometer, where in reality you're going 4 flat. So I would say on that first run, err on the side of cautious. So go out slower than you think your race pace is, and go out so that you finish that first run feeling very fresh. The likelihood is, if you do that, you will probably be on a track to about your actual race pace. Coming in the ski erg, then, like I said, you should be feeling fresh. Doing that 1K at a steady pace. I wouldn't worry about going quick and then going slow at the end to sort of make the second run okay. I would just pick a pace that you found in training, which usually, if you've done it, is around your 5K pace on the ski erg. But pick a pace that's about a 7 out of 10 in terms of efforts, that you're not losing too much time, but you also adhere to the saying that is common but also very true, in that you can't win a race on the ski erg, but you can definitely lose it. If you blast that first run, blast the ski erg, come first out of the ski erg by 20 seconds, you're probably screwed, to be honest. After the ski erg, again, you still have another anywhere from 45 to an hour plus of work to do, right? So there is so much more left of the race to make up time. You don't need to give yourself a 30-second gap on second place after the ski erg. So after the ski erg, you've then got your second run. Again, work on running through the rock zone at that point. So when you leave the ski erg station, run straight out the out arch and go straight into the run. Try and keep that same pace as soon as you.
So what are you saying there, that the temptation after the ski erg is to walk out of the stations to the running track and then start running? And you're saying don't do that. Start running straight away. Even if the running is slower, just don't walk. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that depends. Yeah, it depends on your ability. So if you are able, jog out of the station. Try not to lose too much time there. Pick a pace on the ski erg where you don't have to walk out of the ski erg. Jog immediately, go back onto the run track and try and settle into that pace again that you felt. Adrenaline, hopefully, at this point should be mostly gone, and so you should be able to now feel what your actual race pace feels like within run 2 or 3. Finishing that run, you'll then come into the sled push. This one, again, super easy to kill yourself on.
Oh, I love the sled push. I love the sled push. I want to kill myself on it.
Favorite. So it's super easy to go too hard on this, because the lengths are almost always 12.5 meters. So you've got 4 lengths of sled push no matter what venue you're at. Now, most high-end athletes could push 2, 3, maybe even 4 lengths unbroken if they wanted to. But it's the second station out of 8 of the race. It is so early on. The recommendation from the top all the way down is take a rest each length. Our high-end strength is probably enough to do, like both of us could do that first length unbroken with maybe even the pro weight, definitely the open weight, but don't. If you do that whole first length unbroken, the likelihood is there will be so much lactic acid build up in your legs that coming off the sled push, you'll feel like you have nothing left. You have to take breaks, shake it out. Also, within that break in the sled push, count in your head. So you'll say, for example, in length 1, I'm going to break twice. Each time I break, I'm going to take no more than 10 seconds. And as soon as you count that honest 10 seconds in your head, start pushing, rest, count to 10, keep pushing. If you let yourself lose your train of thought, like I did in the World Championships, and you just kind of sit there, lose focus, you're going to end up bleeding time. You don't want to do that. Take your rests, count your rests, and just keep it consistent throughout those 4 lengths.
So we're now on to run number 3. We've got our kind of steady pace. We've got no adrenaline left, and we're getting our regular pace on that. And now we're into the sled pull.
Yeah, sled pull. So same thing. You've got your 4 lengths. This one, I think if I had to take one tip, would be rope management. Now, this is easier said than done, and also easier said than done to explain rather than show. But what you'll essentially want to do is not feed the rope through your legs. So when you're pulling and you pull the rope back, first of all, don't just use your arms, because you lose so much energy doing that, and you're also a lot weaker. Use your whole body, breezing past that. Use your whole body. Try and pass the rope or let the rope down by the side of you. So when you're pulling, if you let that rope curl up underneath between your legs, you're not going to have the space and the room to push back and lean back with the sled, because you're going to be tripping on the rope. Don't trip on the rope. Prioritize rope management. Pull, drop to your right or to your left, pull, drop to your right, to your left, and then change.
Great.
So I would say those, for me, are the 2 biggest tips. Are use your whole body. Don't just pull with your arms, even if you're strong enough to, for 10 of the 12.5 meters, and put the rope down by your side.
Okay, 4th run, and then we're into the...
Yeah.
Okay, so after our 4th run, we go into the burpee broad jumps. What are they?
They suck, is basically what they are. You start in a push-up position, but with your chest on the ground. You then step up to meet your hands and jump forward, and then repeat that process. For me, just a quick tip with those ones would be to rest at the bottom. So ideally, you'd want to rest when your body is most relaxed, aka when you are lying down in this chest to floor position. If you rest while you're standing up, yes, you get more oxygen into your lungs, but if your knees are bent or if your hands are on your knees, then again, you've lost that benefit, and also you're still using muscles to stand up and you're wasting energy. You can breathe fine at the bottom, unless you can't for some reason. I'll cut that bit out. You can breathe fine at the bottom. Take your rest on the ground when you're completely relaxed, is my advice.
Are you saying that, like with the sled stations, you ought to take rest even if it feels like you could keep going?
Yeah. This is notoriously the station that jacks your heart rate up the most. The race is all about heart rate management, okay? Because if you're in zone 5 too quickly or for too long, you're going to drop off a cliff in terms of energy levels, and you're going to feel awful, and your pace is going to fade in everything you do. Keeping your heart rate at that threshold, so around that zone 4, ensuring you take enough breaks so that if your heart rate does get up too high, you can bring it down, so that when you go onto the run, you're not now running 20 seconds slower than you did last lap.
Okay, so we've more or less just about barely managed to do our burpee broad jumps. We get through run 5, and then we're on to the row erg, which for me, because I've been doing it for quite a while, is it's not a rest station, but I kind of try less hard with this almost than anything else, because I feel like I can keep up a good pace anyway. But what's the general thing with how to approach the 1K row?
So I'm not a fan of the use the row as a rest. It is the only seated station in Hyrox, and if you're doing your first or maybe even second ever race, it is a chance where you can still pull decent numbers and recover in terms of heart rate a lot. So I'm not always against it no matter what. I think it's individual. If you're trying to put a really good time down, no station should be a rest. You should push it to within your capacity on each station. And I would never say that the row station is a rest station. Like I said, if you're new to it and you're efficient enough in the station to be pulling good enough numbers, then that's fine. You can sort of dial it down a little bit, because if you push 3 seconds per 500 quicker than what you're comfortable with doing, that can often result in a far higher risk to reward ratio. You're gaining 6 seconds over 1,000 meters, whilst your heart rate is 10 beats higher. 10 beats higher is a lot worse for you than 6 seconds to the better is. Yeah.
Okay.
So I would say, then this one, don't rest. Use it to sort of, if you're in a competitive scene, scope the competition. You can see what people are doing next to you, see what paces they're pulling. You can sort of see what position you're in. If you're looking to go in podium, you can see, oh, he was first in my wave, I'm now third back from him. It's a sort of a way to gauge what's happening around you during the race, sort of recollect your thoughts. You're in the same space going back and forth for around 4 minutes here. So think, how am I doing? What's my plan for the rest of the race? Do I need to dial it back on the next run? Can I push on the next run? I think it's a time to sort of collect your thoughts and focus and plan, what am I going to do for the remaining 3 stations?
So we've done the row onto the 6th run, and then the 6th station is the farmer's carry, getting a pair of kettlebells. Are there any particular tips? Because I've seen some people kind of staggering around and putting them down on a regular basis. Some people walking while slumped. So they almost allow the kettlebells to pull themselves over. Some people want to stand extremely upright while walking. And then you get 1 or 2 athletes that seem able to run with these things. What would be your tip for Mr. and Ms. Average doing this?
First and foremost, use chalk. I think the difference for me, anecdotally, between using and not using chalk is incredible. I've never once dropped the kettlebells in a competition, not for my first Hyrox, not in my 5th Hyrox, not once have I put the kettlebells down. I did a sim the other week without using chalk with sweaty hands, and I dropped it 3 times. It makes a huge difference. I would also grab them a little bit towards the front end of the kettlebell. We can get into why that is a little bit later, because that gets quite sort of specific. And also stand up tall. If you hunch over, you're going to limit your breathing, your posture is going to go really bad, and you're going to start using a lot of muscles that you don't want to be overloading at that point in the race. Stand tall, use chalk, and grab it near the front of the kettlebell.
Okay, then run 7 and into the sandbag lunges, which is where I thought I was going to explode when I did this, because I was done by this point. And I trained, because I was coming back from injury, I trained lunges like twice, and certain muscles were doing terrible things to me. Tell us about sandbag lunges.
No, I don't want to out you, but
no.
He has some of the best leg genetics I've ever seen, right? His calves are insane. His quads are huge. I've been training legs almost every single day of my life since I was 18, and his legs look better than mine. But he took over 9 minutes on this station in Warsaw, and I don't know how he managed it. I think you held on to the railing to stop falling over about 5 times. You wanted to stop about 8. And with someone... looking at your legs and seeing you do them was just so funny.
It was the only station where I was kind of crying out at a couple of the photos of some sadly freaked out looking people, because I was in pain and I was genuinely afraid that certain muscles were going to come flying off the tendons.
Yeah,
just
it's not your specialty.
No,
but for someone like you pulling over 9 minutes on the lunges, some tips would be stagger step or stutter step. So when you're going through the lunges, some temptation would be, if you're not too tired, would just be to lunge. But a stutter step would be taking a step, recovering, standing tall, maybe even shake out your legs a little, take another step, stand tall, take another step, stand tall. If you keep going step after step after step without even a little break, that's going to have a similar effect to what the sled would do, in that constant muscular contraction in the same area is going to build up lactic acid. That's going to make your legs again feel like jelly, which is not what you want before another run and 100 reps of a weighted squat, essentially.
Okay, so that's the sandbag lunges, and the caveat to that, take it slow, is that you must not put the bag down, not because it's a bad idea in terms of your pace or heart rate, but because it's not allowed.
You put it down once, it's a warning. If it drops to the ground again, you get disqualified.
Which sounds harsh, but actually these things are heavy enough that they kind of sit heavy on your shoulders. So you just need to loop a couple of fingers through each side and forget it's there, kind of. Okay, so that's the 7th station, where I was feeling like death warmed up, going into the last run and into the last event, which is the 100 wall balls. Give us a tip about the wall balls.
One of my favorite stations, to be honest. It's near the end of the race, for one. But for the wall balls, I would say elbows underneath the ball. If you keep your elbows whilst holding the ball underneath it instead of behind it, that's going to keep your squat a lot taller. It's going to make you a lot more efficient, and it's going to enable you to breathe a lot easier. If your elbows are behind the ball, that's going to encourage a hinge, meaning your chest is going to come forward, meaning it's going to be harder to come all the way down to full depth. It's going to be harder and take a lot more energy to then stand up fully and then throw the ball. You want to keep your torso tall, elbows underneath, and keep that really vertical posture.
Right, so a vertical line from the ball through your elbows to the floor, rather than can often do, which is there be a kind of line at an angle. So, and then after the wall balls, stagger over the line. With wall balls, more than anything for me, was where my heart rate goes completely insane, and I have to take a whole bunch of breaks. If you're able to do wall balls without a break, you get a Red Bull patch that says 100 on it, as you will know yourself a couple of times. And if, like me, You take approximately 16 to 20 breaks on your 100 wall balls. No one gives you any patch at all. Okay.
And loses the family relay to the red team.
And loses the family relay to the red team. In my defense, he was about 30 years younger than me, and I was coming from behind.
Quick recap for some context. We did a family relay. Me, you, Granddad, and my friend Zaid. We were back and forth with this team in red the whole time. My granddad would race, my dad would go, Zaid would go, I would go, and I made up a good, huge, storming 4.5 minutes on this guy in red, which enabled you to go into the station at the same time as someone we were about 18 stations behind at the same time. I was then stood behind you, or in front of you, and you didn't see me, screaming the whole time to go, 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 go. Also, context, he did try his best, and he did actually do really, really well. But you lost out in, what was it, the last 5 wall balls, I think? You admitted defeat to them. It was back and forth for like 96 wall balls.
Yeah, he and I were exchanging like 2 or 3 wall balls ahead with our breaks the entire way. And then I was taking breaks where I couldn't breathe. I wasn't taking breaks because I was tired. I was taking breaks because my heart rate was near 170 and I literally couldn't get oxygen in. And as soon as I could get enough oxygen in to stand up straight, I'd start again. And we got to 94 and I just completely hit the walls.
But I think that was great. I think if he wasn't there, you would have genuinely have done them probably 90 seconds slower.
Probably.
But because of that competition, I think you 5-6 minutes, was it?
It was 2 minutes quicker than my solo wall ball effort a few months before.
And it was a really, really good effort. This isn't through lack of effort. This is purely because I know how competitive he is. I know how competitive I am. And if I was in that position, losing would have absolutely killed me. So giving him grief about it will hopefully mean he's more motivated, even more motivated for our next relay.
I cannot lose in the wall balls ever again. It's so depressing. So getting overtaken by some guy who's almost as bad as me was just dreadful. And thanks for bringing it up. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
And on that bombshell, we'll close off today, I think, with our quote of the week, which I'd like your response on. This is a quote from Bruce Lee, who that famous hybrid fitness athlete, who said, "The successful warrior is the average man with laser-like focus." True or false? The successful warrior is the average man with laser-like focus.
I feel hyper simplified.
Go on, contradict Bruce Lee. Tell us Bruce Lee's wrong. Doesn't know what he's talking about. What would he know?
Laser focus is a good component of being a successful warrior.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. But
along with many other components.
Are you politely trying to suggest that talent is relevant?
Yes.
There we go.
Yes. Someone with a higher genetic makeup of type 2X fibers as a sprinter is going to be more successful than an equally driven member of society who is made up genetically of fewer type 2X muscle fibers, for example.
So we need to define success, which we won't do now. But, he's got a point, but it's simplistic. Okay. Great. Okay, so that brings us to the end of episode 3 of the podcast. We've been looking at an introduction to Hyrox. So that was Jude taking us through all the 8 stations of Hyrox after our recap on last week's conversation about hybrid fitness and CrossFit's place in the hybrid fitness universe. Join us next week when we will have an introduction to the sport of deadly dozen, which is something else that you've been getting into and that is gaining a lot of traction in the UK. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening. I've been Paul Reynolds.
I've been Jude Reynolds.
Remember to hit follow on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and you can also subscribe to our weekly podcast on YouTube and on Instagram. You can find us at Hybrid Fitness Report. Thank you, and see you next week.